What do you want people to take away from your book?
What I want them to understand is that the West lives in a myth. The myth that Islam is simply a religion is not true. Islam is Sharia law. In fact, in Great Britain, they've established Islamic courts in which Muslims can go and deal with their cases. Terrorism is not an isolated phenomenon. When my cousin Raed, a 16-year-old boy, went to Ben Yehuda Street and attempted to blow up Jews and kill civilians, when he was killed by the Israelis, my Aunt Fatima hailed him as a martyr. In fact, the entire community was part and parcel of supporting the martyrdom of my own cousin. You would see placards on the walls of the streets of the city depicting him as Rambo, fighting for the cause of Allah. The local mosque will be hailing him as a martyr. My aunt's house becomes a museum. So Westerners don't understand that when 20,000 Egyptians set a pogrom in Egypt, especially during this Mumbai attack, you would think that Muslims would denounce the Mumbai attack, yet when in reality 20,000 set up a pogrom in Egypt attempting to kill Christians. No one asked about the suffering of the Christians in Gaza itself, in which the only Christian bookstore, a man by the name of Rami, shot, and a church in Gaza bombed. No one talks about the suffering of the Assyrian Christians in Iraq. No one talks about the suffering of the Coptic Christians in Egypt or the suffering of the Palestinian Christians in Bethlehem. Everybody wants to talk about how Israel is bad and how Israel is evil and how Israel supposedly has the strength over Hamas that it needs to kind of take it easy on the civil population. No one knows that the civil population of Gaza itself is part and parcel of the militia apparatus of Hamas. The people themselves support the agenda. They harbor the terrorists. They allow them to launch the rockets from their territory. They allow them to make the bombs in their homes. No one knows that Islam is not simply a peaceful religion, as everybody says. When the Pope critiqued Islam, and he said Islam must never be spread through violence, the Muslim world went in havoc in demonstrations by the millions in the streets. How dare the Pope say what he said? Yet the expression of the peacefulness of Islam was expressed through sheer violence by killing nuns and attacking churches all throughout the Muslim world. The West does not recognize that the war has been declared on us a long time ago. The West does not recognize that it is not the the American occupation of Iraq or Israel's so-called occupation of Palestine is the reason for this war that was declared on us. But in 1924, when the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the Caliphate was removed, you must think that 4 years later the Muslim Brotherhood was born and jihadism was set in motion. When communist Russia fell apart, we aided the Mujahideen in Afghanistan to remove the communist threat, which gave birth to the Taliban. The West needs to recognize that supporting the lesser of the two evils is not the solution. That supporting the PA over Hamas is not the solution, because the PA has a branch called Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, which hails nothing but fundamental Islam, bombing Jews and blowing themselves up. The West doesn't understand the reason why Muslims want to blow themselves up. The West doesn't ask the question why 3/4 of all suicide bombing that happens exist in Muslim countries that have virtually no occupation whatsoever. The West doesn't understand that this is a salvation plan that has been inculcating our minds from childhood. A salvation plan in which Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam himself, said that by the martyr's blood, by the first drop of his blood, not only he will enter paradise, but he will become an intercessor for 70 members of his or her family. It is a salvation plan that says that you must die for the cause of Allah. Thank God that in 1993 I read the Bible, and I read the words of Jesus in which he said, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, that God already has done this for me. He martyred himself on my behalf.
Well, why does the West not understand this?
The West has been conditioned through the media. Whenever you want to critique Islam, you are nicknamed as an Islamophobe. When I used to be working part and parcel of the terror agenda under the PLO and as well under the Hamas apparatus before it was called Hamas, it was Muslim Brotherhood, active in Chicago. It was called the IEP, Islamic Association of Palestine. In fact, my mentor Jamal Saeed still runs a mosque in Bridgeview, Illinois. This inculcation began from the early 80s in the West as well, that this kind of system have inculcated 90% of the mosques in America. In fact, the Mumbai attacks were funded from monies that were raised from Great Britain. The West doesn't understand. It is the political apparatus of Islam that we need to address, not just simply the explosive act. Because when it comes to terrorism, the West thinks that terrorism is simply the explosive act. Jihad comes through three stages: the financial stage, the political stage, and then the jihad act itself. When I used to be active in Chicago, and I was making demonstrations in the streets of Chicago condemning Israel and America, the media called us freedom fighters. Yet the moment that I began to express my view as a Christian, calling the Islamic movement what it is, the media nicknamed us as Islamophobes, bigoted, divisive, racist, fundamentalist, Bible-thumping Christians. I began to realize that these kind of names that they gave us, I should take those as a badge of honor and continue my mission as Brother Savage does in fighting and defending this country, to save this country and restore our freedom the way it used to be.
Walid Shoebat, thanks for being on the Savage Nation.
Thank you as well, Brother Savage, for standing strong and standing tall, especially in the conditions that is going on in the world arena.
This is the Savage Nation.
Savage.